Let's start off with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. 2 years have been going, but these folks are going back and forth. It's dominating the headlines for over that 2 year mark. The ongoing conflict with Russia and Ukraine doesn't seem to have any possibility of ending, although we get this like nearly daily footage of Ukraine using their drones against Russians. And it just seems like Russians just keep sending people in and in and in. While geographically, this is super distant from us, the effects very undeniable. We just slapped more sanctions on Russia, on their oil. We're seeing sustained pressure on the global energy market, such as rising gas prices, disruptions to food supplies, such as the grain that's produced in Ukraine due to the impact of agricultural exports, and a general destabilization of international relations. I mean, listen, for us preppers, this means consistently reevaluating your food and energy reserves. Are you really planning for alternatives for heating, for cooking methods, for robust fuel prices that could skyrocket? Have you diversified your food storage beyond what is easily attainable at grocery stores? Think long term when it comes to shelf life, but consider skills when it comes to gardening and stuff like that. We have so much going on when it comes to this conflict that it just kind of goes beyond just like immediately what's going on with your prep. I don't know like how this ends. It seems to continue to cost us our treasure. Thank goodness it has not cost us any of our blood, as in troops, but we're sending overstock of defense equipment that we've built, or new defense equipment, or stuff that we want to replace for our own military. So we're sending it over to Ukraine. And it just seems to be weird because as we continue to do this, it doesn't end. I mean, Russia just keeps sending folks in, thousands upon casualties. They're losing at least a battalion of people per day to casualties. That's a lot of folks. I mean, that is a lot of assets to be lost, and they just continue to do it. And for us, just as this influences anything, slapping sanctions on Russian oil influences other that are buying their oil, such as your Europeans, different markets in Asia, where that could influence pricing as we get oil from the Gulf. And, we got to really consider that type of stuff as well. That's the number one thing I wanted to start off with. But you already know that is not the only thing that's going on that you need to consider for your prep. As we know, recently, Israel and Gaza came up with a ceasefire. Not necessarily a truce, but a ceasefire. And it was partially broken, I guess, by Hamas. I'm not really sure. And Israel lobbed some more bombs into Gaza to try to take out that threat. And now they've, at least 4 days ago, stopped the humanitarian aid going into Gaza. This is an unfolding crisis. I think it's undeniable. When aid stops, civilian populations suffer immensely. The highlights of the fragility of supply chains and a potential rapid societal collapse in conflict zones. For us, it's a stark reminder of how quickly essential resources can be weaponized or simply become unavailable. What does it mean for your prep? Consider the ethical implications of your own resource gathering. In a true SHTF scenario, communities will rely upon each other. Folks that live in the Gaza Strip, it's when your entire city block is destroyed, it's kind of hard for you to think to yourself, how can I be a resource instead of a consumer when you don't have resources to give? But just seeing this conflict just makes me think to myself, as we continue to give treasure to Israel and we continue to see this crisis that's going on over there, and, the crisis that happened in Israel 2 years ago, and over 1,000 of their people lost, and they were just having a good time. It just seems like that we are ever having examples of what can happen in other places that could affect us here at the house, at the crib. And I'm always thinking about, what if that were to happen here? Would I be an asset? Would I be a resource? Would I be a consumer? Would I be someone that could be relied upon my neighbors? I don't know. But we're seeing this unfold in front of us, and it's something that we need to continue to think about as well. I hope you guys didn't forget about the kinetic activity that's going on here in the Western Hemisphere, much closer to home than Russia or Israel or any of that type of stuff. We got to shift our attention to the potentially impactful development of these kinetic strikes in our hemisphere, specifically tied to the perceived U.S. aggression in South America. Now, here's the thing. We are seeing a rise in geopolitical maneuvering, proxy conflicts, and even direct engagements that can destabilize entire regions. The Venezuela president Maduro literally made a plea in English for peace, but he's also threatened insurrection if things were to further escalate. So he kind of seems to be talking on both sides of his mouth. But for those in the Americas, this could mean disruption to trade routes, increased refugee flows. That's the thing I'm thinking about is, will there be refugees that coming out of Venezuela? Even the potential for localized conflict spilling over different borders. I mean, if we're thinking about Colombia and Ecuador and Venezuela, and we're hitting speedboats, that in my opinion, these speedboats would need to refuel 20 times to get to Miami. So it looks like a lot of these boats may have been going to international waters or going to like Tobago or Trinidad. I've talked to my father-in-law who lives in Caracas, Venezuela. And the crazy thing is that most people there are going about their daily lives, but they know about the number of ships that we're building up in the U.S. They know about that. The Southcom commander is retiring at the end of this year. They know about our stance. They know about our build up. They know about B-2 bombers flying over that area. B-1 bomber just flew over that area yesterday. These are things that are present and aware of them. And for the most part, they're nervous. They're nervous about an escalation because Secretary Hegseth and the president have both said that we're starting to run out of boats, meaning that we're running out of boats to strike, to hit. And when you see us putting F-35s, more submarines, more destroyers, more assets in the region, it leads me to believe that we are heading towards regime change. It does lead me to believe that labeling these folks as narco-terrorism is similar to us fighting Al-Qaeda during the global war on terrorism. I believe that this could create civil unrest, increase, just a lot of law enforcement presence that may be stepping up to see if any of these folks from those areas. The biggest thing for me personally is hopefully we are not having to put our own blood, sweat, and tears into a conflict in Venezuela, even if we want regime change. Me personally, I still think it's all about that oil, baby. Venezuela got a lot of it. And I don't know, it's weird that we're kind of propping up Argentina now. We're talking about quadrupling our imports of Argentinian beef. And we're giving them $20 billion, possibly even more than that. And that is just weird to me, because what that leads me to believe is that if we were to do regime change in Venezuela and get that oil, baby, that sweet, sweet oil, that we would already have allies in that area. We already have allies in the region, or folks that are just not going to get in our way. Colombia's not going to get in our way. Ecuador is not going to get in our way. Argentina, Chile, Brazil, none of those folks are going to get in our way. And so we can go and get what the heck we want. But what cost does that mean for us? If conflict were to escalate, I think the cost of stuff in this hemisphere, because of trade routes being disrupted, is a real thing. You got to think about things that you rely on that may come from South America. What the hell are they? I'm not sure. We already know that a lot of soybeans are coming from like Brazil, and they're going to China instead. So we're already affected by having to compete with South America for some stuff. So are we trying to like dampen that down? I'm not really sure, but it still can affect the fact that as people have different political opinions about whether the strikes are legal here in the States, that kind of spills into the streets. And speaking of spilling into the streets, we're seeing more of ICE raids, National Guards in our streets, and just kind of like civilian on whether they're paramilitary, actual military, folks in the military fatigues. Most civilians can't tell, other than the fact it says ICE on the back of their vest, who's an ICE agent or who is in the military. But the thing is that here in these streets is that we're seeing a big old shift in the domestic landscape. So we have border enforcement, which is a good thing. Civil unrest is not a good thing. And because of those two things, the border enforcement and the civil unrest and other reasons, increased federal presence can change the dynamic of your community literally overnight. For preppers, this means understanding your rights, having a clear communication plan with your family, and being aware of potential restrictions on movement or gatherings, emphasizing the importance of community building. Knowing your neighbors and having a local support network can be valuable when external forces increase their presence. I mean, if you're in an area and you don't know your neighbors, you don't know the folks around you, and things were to shift dramatically, regardless if you like those shifts or not, ICE shows up on your streets, National Guard shows up on your streets, civil arrests were to occur. Do you know the people around you? Do you have an evacuation plan? Do you have a communication plan? I'm here in Texas. My communication plan is not with the people in Texas. It's with people in other states to communicate with them if something were to go down. This is what's going on with me. This is where we're located. This is how you can send me resources like money or food or whatever. That's a plan that we're developing. And we have to think about that, especially if you're in a liberal city. Just keep it real. Like, what's your plan to let people know that you're A-OK, you're just kicking it back, you got your ankles crossed, and you're fine? You have to think about all that type of stuff, because it's not just the foreign stuff. It's the stuff that's happened here domestically as well. Speaking of domestically, we're back at 3% when it comes to inflation. Tariffs are a real thing. Listen, this is very anecdotal, but camera equipment I buy for this YouTube channel, stuff that I buy to show you guys here, whether it's knives or multi-tools or prep gear or survival kits or bags, all those prices are ticking up slowly. I'm noticing a lot of domestically made stuff are kind of like holding steady. Stuff I'm getting from Nutsack, or if I'm buying stuff from Leatherman, the prices are staying steady. But what they're doing is they're giving you less. For instance, I bought the Leatherman Arc last year, $229, I believe I spent on that. It came with a sheath. It came with a bit kit. You can now buy the Leatherman Arc, at least on the base website, still same price, but you don't get those additional items. And for everywhere else, the price went up. Just importing stuff cost more. If you're trying to import stuff on an individual basis, you're having to pay, taxes just to get your stuff from UPS or to get your stuff brought in. Tariffs are a real thing. Inflation's a real thing. Both of those things are causing households to spend more money. Imagine your household makes $100,000. The rising cost of healthcare, inflation being higher. Instead of paying $6,000 a year for healthcare, now you're paying $12,000, and groceries cost you 3% more. $100,000 and you're not getting a bump in pay. That can cause a lot of strife in families and people to start doing gig work or idiotic things. And what's your plan when it comes to your prep? Can you continue to sustain your prep? Can you build upon it with everything that's going on around us? I think that's a hard thing to do. It's something that you definitely need to think about. And that even includes the fact that right now the government is shut down. We have people that receive SNAP benefits in WIC, that if you have a kid 5 age or younger, that states have already started to announce that as of next month, which is next week, that they're not going to be able to pay those benefits out to families that need it. Now, whatever your opinion is about folks to get SNAP, EBT, and WIC, the folks get the shit. So the fact that they get it sometimes make people become desperate. I mentioned gig work. That's a legitimate thing. Hoe work, you do what you got to do. But also people coming after stuff that they know that you have. Your neighbors know that you're a prepper. They know you got money. They know you have supplies and resources. As they begin to dwindle and stuff, first they ask for stuff, then they begin to take stuff. Literally 2 weeks ago here in my man cave, I'm sitting here next to a garage door. I'm literally in here clacking away. On the other side of this door, a young punk was going into my truck, going through the armrest, looking for shit. He didn't take anything, which means to me, he was looking for money, because there was knives and flashlights and lighters and all sorts of stuff that's valuable, but he didn't understand that. But the fact is, maybe economy, maybe drugs, but more of that type of shit could happen as we go through these economic woes, as we go through these economic worries. And that's the type of stuff that I want you to think about when it comes to your prep. The takeaway from all this stuff, that it is a volatile place out there. There's hot spots all around the world. Keeping your pantry stocked is an important thing, but thinking about a plan when it comes to anything going down in a big way is something that you definitely need to think about. First time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. Let me know, what are you worried about when it comes to SHTF, economic impacts, or things going on around the world? If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.